This is flight AA3245. It's an American Airlines Boeing 787 about to land at Philadelphia International. But it's not coming from London, Paris, or any of the other international destinations commonly served by this airport. This plane is coming from Chicago. A big plane on a short domestic hop isn't an accident. It's a glimpse into a surprisingly intricate system where wide-bodies get rotated around the country to balance an airline's entire network. To help explain how this works, I'm gonna go catch a flight from Philadelphia to Miami on a Dreamliner, like this one. Generally, it's safe to think that a larger plane will fly a longer route. At United's hub in Newark, the flight to Richmond, Virginia covers less than 300 miles and is commonly operated by an E-175. The roughly 1,600-mile route from Newark to Denver is typically served by an A321. For the longer journey of over 3,000 miles to London, a widebody or an aircraft with 2 passenger aisles is usually used. At longer distances, bigger planes generally make more sense. They have higher fuel capacity, greater maximum takeoff weight, and more powerful, efficient engines. Economically, long-haul markets usually have enough passenger and cargo demand to fill larger aircraft and spread fixed costs over more seats, while short routes are better served by smaller jets for load factor and quick turn efficiency. But that's not always the case. In the US, major carriers routinely operate wide-body aircraft on domestic routes, a practice dating back to the regulated era of the 1970s, when airlines even flew jumbo jets into mid-sized cities.
Our new plane. I still can't get over all this space.
Over time, as smaller jets gained range and deregulation shifted the focus toward frequency, the use of domestic widebodies became more selective. However, in recent years, domestic widebody flying has rebounded, especially as airlines repositioned aircraft during the pandemic recovery, and remains higher today than pre-2019 levels. Still, these flights represent a small fraction of the total. Only about 1 in 128 US domestic flights is operated by a twin-aisle aircraft. Domestic widebodies remain a niche targeted tool primarily used by the big 3 US carriers and, to a lesser extent, Alaska and Hawaiian Airlines. At constrained airports where gate or slot limits cap frequencies, one large jet can replace multiple narrow-body departures. From a staffing standpoint, a widebody can be more efficient than multiple smaller aircraft. A single 777 carrying 300 to 400 passengers uses 2 pilots and around 10 cabin crew. Moving the same number of people on narrow bodies might require 2 to 3 flights, each one with its own pilots and crew. American acknowledged in 2021 that this isn't the most economical on paper, because 2 narrowbodies can provide similar capacity at similar per-seat cost. But with widebodies and crews at the ready, it was a fast way to add capacity and cover surging demand with fewer departures. Many domestic widebody flights exist primarily because the aircraft needs to be repositioned. Instead of flying empty, carriers schedule revenue flights to move jets between hubs ahead of their long-haul routes. For example, the exact plane I flew on had this specific flight path in the week before my trip. And after my flight, it continued on to South America. It's all part of a continuous rotation where multiple wide-body aircraft circulate on domestic routes throughout the day to strategically position themselves. In this case, another Dreamliner arrives from separate long-haul flights to operate the return journey in the opposite direction. But my flight is also a good example that airlines lean on cargo revenue. Wide-body bellies on domestic legs can help improve profitability. A lot of the cargo in the plane's hold isn't actually freight going from Philadelphia to Miami. Instead, it's usually long-haul shipments that freight companies have booked on bigger international routes, like from the US Northeast to Latin America or from Europe to Latin America. Those shipments just happen to connect through Philadelphia and Miami along the way.
Introducing our new Boeing 777, co-designed by the employee owners of United.
US airlines still operate 20-plus-year-old 767s and 777s that are relatively fuel-hungry on long routes. Deploying these jets on medium-haul domestic routes helps keep them productive without subjecting them to the demands of ultra-long flights. This approach also preserves newer, more fuel-efficient widebodies for international service. Additionally, since many 767s are fully depreciated, using them this way can be a financially smart strategy to maximize asset value. Finally, widebodies carry flagship premium products: lie-flat business class, premium economy, more lavatories, and consistent in-flight entertainment. Putting that product on domestic routes both upgrades the offering and strengthens brand positioning on competitive corridors. United and Delta in particular use widebodies on high-profile routes like New York to LA and New York to San Francisco to give high-yield travelers more premium options. But that brings up an interesting question. Since the big 3 US airlines all operate widebodies on domestic routes, Why is their strategy so different? Delta has recently made the biggest push of any US carrier. For the March to October 2025 season, it scheduled about 12,470 of these flights, up from just over 9,000 in the same 2024 period, a 36% increase. That lifted Delta's share of all US domestic widebody flights from 25% to 33%. The centerpiece is New York. On JFK to San Francisco, Delta went from only 45 widebody departures in summer 2024 to a planned 880 in summer 2025. Widebodies jumped from 3% to 65% of those trips, with up to 6 daily departures each way. JFK to LA is even more intense, with 7 to 11 daily widebody flights in each direction. In total, as of 2025, 13 domestic routes now see at least daily Delta twin-aisle service. The backbone is the 767, which handles about 83% of Delta's domestic widebody flights, with the remainder mostly A330s plus a handful of A350s. United is the most habitual user of these aircraft. Its widebody seat count grew from roughly 27,000 in 2015 to more than 53,000 by 2025, the largest of any US airline. It uses a mix of 767s, 777s, 787s on domestic trunk legs like Newark to San Francisco and Dulles to Los Angeles. Much of this is operated by 777-200s, including a high-density domestic subfleet, which is basically a people mover. 364 seats with only 28 business class seats up front and 336 economy seats. By contrast, a standard long-haul United 777-200ER carries 88 less total seats with 50 Polaris Business, 24 Premium Plus, and 202 economy seats. Operationally, United uses domestic widebodies to reinforce hub connectivity, route aircraft through specific maintenance bases, and ease pilot and crew shortages. During the COVID recovery, when Asia flying lagged, it ran even more domestic twin aisles to keep crew and aircraft active. As long-haul demand returned, it shifted capacity back overseas, but obviously still maintains a sizable domestic widebody schedule. American seems to be the most selective of the three. It retired all of its 767s and A330s in 2020, shrinking widebody seating capacity from roughly 39,000 seats in 2015 to around 35,000 in 2025. And leaving mainly 777s and 787s, including up to 7 daily 777s each way on Miami to Los Angeles and JFK, and multiple daily widebodies on key Dallas-Fort Worth routes. Supported partially by cargo revenue and enabled by payroll support program funding, which notably gave American Airlines almost $6 billion, that phase briefly justified roughly 1,800 daily seats each way on Miami to Los Angeles and New York. Since 2022, American has pulled the highest percentage of their widebody fleet back to international service. Today, they appear mainly on hub connectors like Miami to Dallas-Fort Worth, or Dallas-Fort Worth to O'Hare, and on long domestic legs to Hawaii. A new wrinkle is American's cargo division explicitly leveraging domestic widebodies. In April of 2025, they announced an expansion of domestic widebody flights connecting major hubs, specifically citing new widebody service between Dallas-Fort Worth and cities like Miami, Chicago, and Philadelphia. The difficult part of the math for airlines is trying to justify the twin-aisle aircraft in terms of space and revenue. A lie-flat seat with direct aisle access typically uses about 4 times the floor area of an economy seat. So to break even on cabin real estate, you need something close to 4 times the economy fare on average, before higher service costs. On long-haul international flights, that's pretty achievable, but domestically, business fares tend to sit at around 2 times the price of economy, and that's after factoring in upgrades and discounts. That means each flatbed is worth less than the space it occupies, compared to what it can earn internationally. And what about how seasonality plays into all this? When peak transatlantic demand, like New York to London, drops in the European winter, the same widebodies can be redeployed. United and Delta shift jets onto warmer North American and Caribbean routes in the winter, with states like Hawaii seeing more service. American not only increases frequency to Miami, like the flight I'm on today, but they also focus on Latin America. They add extra frequencies from Miami to hubs like Buenos Aires and other South American cities as European demand eases. What makes domestic widebody flying so fascinating to me is how it reveals the complexity of airline route planning, while also showing the trade-offs airlines make, sacrificing some efficiency to solve bigger challenges, while giving passengers a more comfortable widebody experience that many, including me, appreciate. With all that being said, thank you for watching. I'm Josh, this is AirCore.